Hey friends, today is September 11th, and as I'm sure many of you know, it is 20 years since the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001, one of the more difficult days in the history of the United States. I want to tell you a story from that day, which isn't a story, it's history, and I hope I get all the details right because it was passed on to me, word of mouth, um, but it's about something that happened after the attack on the Pentagon. So the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. was one of the places where that an airplane crashed into. And there was tremendous damage, and there were over 100 lives lost. And at the time, there was an architecture engineering firm that was doing some work on the Pentagon. And some of those workers were still there doing work that day. And after the plane hit, and after the plane did its damage, and after the fires started, a lot of those workers from that engineering firm, they came outside to help the rescue workers who were trying to make their way in. So the police and the firefighters and the emergency responders, they showed up and they wanted to help and they needed to know where to go. And so this engineering firm, which had the blueprints to the entire building, they set up tables right outside the disaster area, and they put the blueprints out and they just started showing people where to go. And of course, it was a long day. And there's one woman that I was told about from this engineering firm who went out to work one of these tables. And she went out there wearing what she had been wearing for the day, and what she had been wearing to work that day, she was wearing her high heels, but she didn't take them off. She stayed in her high heels all day, just standing outside. But what happened as she stood outside and she was helping all these emergency responders who were coming in to help, she stood there for so long as the water that they had been pouring into the building to put the fires out, as it eventually started making its way out of the building again, and came in and soaked the ground underneath her feet. And as she continued to stand there, her feet in her heels just gradually sank down into the ground so deeply that eventually her entire feet were under the mud. Like the heels were completely buried and the shoes were completely buried, and I don't know how far up her leg, but it was all buried in the mud. And she didn't try to go anywhere else. She just stayed there and she let it happen because she was determined to help. Those shoes, they're on display now apparently in one of the museums in Washington, D.C. Well, actually, I don't know if it's Washington, D.C. It could be one of the Smithsonian museums or maybe the 9/11 Memorial Museum out in New York. But regardless, they're on display because they're a picture of the best type of love. A love that's determined to help, no matter the cost to the person who is providing that help. And on this day, I want you to take that as a picture of the love that Jesus has for you all the time. In the book of Philippians, we're told that Jesus lowered himself, willingly, by choice, humbled himself even to death on a cross. As he wasn't covered in the mud, although that may have happened too, but Scripture tells us he was covered in some way by people's spit, by his own blood that was pouring down from his forehead and from his hands and from his feet. And of course, we also know he was covered with the weight of the whole world's sins. But neither did he move. Though he could have. He chose not to. For no other reason than he wanted to help you. He wanted to help you find a way through this very difficult life, in this sometimes very difficult world. He wanted to help you find a reason to believe that you're going to be okay. Whatever damage is ever done in this world, and whatever pain comes along with it. He wanted to help you find confidence to live every day knowing that God is determined to be with you no matter what it costs him. And he wanted to help you find the freedom. Freedom to know that you belong to God. Today, tomorrow, and for eternity. That's what Jesus' love does for you. And it's true for you today, and it'll be true for you tomorrow, and it'll be true for you every day into eternity. Jesus knows how hard life in this world can be. He lived here too. And the reason he did is to let you know that he's already overcome that pain. He overcame it for you. And he is determined to walk with you and to be with you until the day when we are finally free from all of it, in eternal perfection with him. Rest well in that truth tonight, my friends.